Hi. A couple of my friends asked me to do a little bit more comprehensive walk around video on how I built this engine test stand. This thing was built almost completely out of scrap that I had laying around. That is, the main frame is 3/16" wall, 2x4 tubing. Those are plastic end caps, and the end caps and the casters both came from McMaster-Carr. They're real nice. I did not build this thing to be universal, although it can easily be made universal just by making universal uprights. But what I made this thing specifically for was I made it around these engine mounts, which are swap mounts from 460 EFI guys. And they are made to swap 460 into a truck that has a 351M or a 400 in it. And this engine's going in that truck, which has a 351M, or correction, it's got a 400 in it. And Ford never put the 460 in that truck in that configuration, so you have to do a little tweaking. But what turned out, it worked out really well. Obviously, I can bolt up, a 429 or 460 to this thing, but I can also bolt up a 351M or a 400 directly to this thing. And also, I have a 302 that I built, and I put it on the test stand just to see if it would fit, and it bolts directly up. So now I can put a 385 big block series on here, any M series, or any Windsor series engine. So that worked out really well. The reason the tailstock looks a little funny is when I first built this thing, I did not have a spare bell housing. So these bolt directly to the block. Obviously, you turn this thing around to do it. And it would have worked just fine. But I really wanted a bell housing on there because this truck has a manual transmission, which means I've got a flywheel, which is a huge 50-pound spinning wheel of death. So I got a hold of a bell housing and turned the tailstock around and welded the parts on it. It worked out just fine. I could probably make this thing a little bit more self-contained by putting a rack down here for the fuel tank. I'm not real comfortable having a fuel tank directly underneath the engine. It doesn't need to be there, so I didn't do it, and I can later if I want to. The uprights for the panel and the radiator are just 1-inch square tubing. Those are 9/16 bolts. Just loosen them up, and everything slides right out. The radiator stand can be turned around either direction. That radiator, I bought it to go directly into that truck. It's an aluminum 4-row. It's a Summit brand. I shouldn't need to, hopefully, because I've already got a 4-row Champion in the truck. That's just a whiskey bottle overflow, which I thought was cute. My brother drinks that stuff, so I bought that and poured the whiskey out into a mason jar for him when he visits. I am using an electric fan, although it's no problem to use a mechanical fan on here. I did space it out for a mechanical fan, and I will run a mechanical fan on the truck. The battery box, that's just a universal deal that I bought and welded on there. The battery is grounded directly to the frame and also to the engine block. I made this bracket for the solenoid. Let's see. The switch panel, this is just store-bought. It's a race car, panel. That's store-bought. These are just part store, cheap part store gauges, although I didn't like the oil pressure gauge, so I put an auto meter on there. This throttle cable is actually a universal cable and lever setup that I got off Amazon. And the cable just runs around the backside. I've got it zip tied to one of the lift points here, and I made this bracket off of a choke cable clamp from an old Edelbrock carburetor, and it works out really well. And I think that's about it on the test stand. The engine is a 460. It's a 1971 casting. I got the engine out of it was running in a 74 Thunderbird, and it's in really great shape. Took it apart, didn't see anything wrong. One little score on the crankshaft, which ended up making this whole thing snowball. But anyway, I took it to the, got it disassembled, cleaned up, took the crank and the block to the machine shop, Diamond Racing Engines, Louisiana. Everything was good, except we did not like that score on the crankshaft. So I said, well, I have to buy all the components, all the other components for the rotating assembly. I might as well just get a complete balanced forged rotating assembly. So I went to Ohio Crankshaft and got a complete forged rotating assembly. It's a 4.15 inch stroke crankshaft instead of a 3.85 inch. 6.7 inch H-beam connecting rods and 4.39 inch SRP flat top pistons that I believe have a 29cc dish. And again, everything is forged, and you do the math and that adds up to 502 cubic inches, which was much more engine than I wanted. But it ought to be fun. It definitely burned some fuel on the test stand. And the static compression ratio is 9.95 to 1. The dynamic compression ratio is, I believe, 7.82 to 1. So this is a pump gas engine. You know, I'll run fairly high octane in it, but I don't think it would be any problem running 87 in it if I wanted to, but I doubt I ever will. Well, I think that's about it. Let's crank this thing up. Disco ball. I believe that's about it. If I missed anything that somebody wants to know about on the test stand build or the engine, let me know.